Welcome to Hong Kong Brief. The content of the briefing includes: UN experts urge Hong Kong to drop charges against Jimmy Lai. Chinese stocks rebound as officials consider market rescue package. India overtakes Hong Kong as world's fourth largest stock market. Why China is trying to curb short selling after stock rout. Hedge fund Asia Genesis shuts after big mistake on China trade. UN experts urge Hong Kong to drop charges against Jimmy Lai. Bloomberg. A group of UN human rights experts has called on Hong Kong to drop all charges against Jimmy Lai, the former media mogul who is currently on trial for sedition and colluding with foreign forces. The experts expressed concern over violations of Lai's freedom of expression, peaceful assembly, and association, as well as his right to a fair trial. They stated that Lai's arrest and criminal proceedings appear to be directly related to his criticism of China's government and his support for democracy in Hong Kong. The UN experts' comments come as the organization conducts a regular review of China's human rights record. Hong Kong's government has not yet responded to the request for comment. Lai, who is already serving prison sentences for other offenses, has pleaded not guilty to the charges against him. Western governments are closely watching the trial, as a conviction could strain relations between China and the US and UK. Chinese stocks rebound as officials consider market rescue package. Bloomberg. Reports suggest that Chinese policymakers are considering a package of measures to stabilize the country's stock markets, potentially injecting 2 trillion Chinese yuan, $278 billion, into the market, and buying shares onshore via the Hong Kong exchange link. Chinese equities have seen a seemingly endless decline over the past year, as investors sold out amid bad news including a rolling property crisis, fears of a deflationary spiral and rising geopolitical tensions. India overtakes Hong Kong as world's fourth largest stock market. Bloomberg. India's stock market has surpassed Hong Kong's in terms of combined value, making it the fourth largest equity market in the world. India has been attracting investors with its strong corporate earnings and growing retail investor base, positioning itself as an alternative to China. Meanwhile, Hong Kong has experienced a historic slump due to China's anti-COVID-19 measures, regulatory crackdowns, a property crisis, and geopolitical tensions. However, some strategists expect a turnaround for China's stock market, with UBS Group AG predicting Chinese stocks will outperform Indian peers in 2024. Why China is trying to curb short selling after stock rout. Bloomberg. China's largest stockbroker, CITIC Securities, has suspended short selling for some clients in mainland markets in an attempt to stem the slide in Chinese shares. Short-selling restrictions usually do not provide a long-term boost, and history has shown that such curbs have been detrimental for market liquidity and have failed to support asset prices. The move by CITIC Securities follows a series of market interventions by Chinese authorities, including state buying of bank shares, which have failed to halt the decline in shares. Hedge fund Asia Genesis shuts after big mistake on China trade. Bloomberg. Asia Genesis Asset Management is to close its macro fund after suffering losses due to China's stock market rout and Japan's rally. The hedge fund had a drawdown of 18.8% in the first weeks of January, and the fund is returning money to investors after losses on long Hong Kong and China equities positions, as well as short Nikkei bets. The fund's chief investment officer, Chuasun Hawk, said the fund had made a big mistake in trying to pick the bottom of benchmark Hong Kong indexes, and was astounded with the Nikkei Hang Seng spread that priced Chinese and Japanese stocks at the same value as in 1991. China to face rare scrutiny on rights record in UN review. Japan Times. China is facing scrutiny from Western countries during its Universal Periodic Review, UPR, at the United Nations. Concerns are expected to be raised about a civil liberties crackdown, repression in Xinjiang, and Hong Kong's national security law. The UPR is a regular examination that all 193 UN member states must undergo to assess their human rights record. Western countries are keen to hold China accountable for its actions. Tencent's riot games to lay off 530, or 11% of staff. Bloomberg. Riot Games, the maker of popular game League of Legends, plans to lay off 530 employees, or about 11% of its staff. The company stated that the layoffs are a necessity and not driven by shareholder appeasement or quarterly earnings. Riot Games has recently expanded its operations and made several new bets, including the development of new games. However, the company now acknowledges that it has lost focus and has too many projects underway. As a result, Riot Games will reduce the size of its Legends of Runeterra team and end new development work from its internal subsidiary, Riot Forge. The layoffs at Riot Games follow similar job cuts at Unity Software and Twitch. Messi, Miami beaten by Dallas in preseason friendly. Yahoo! Lionel Messi and his Inter Miami team lost 1-0 to FC Dallas in a preseason friendly on Monday. The Argentine and his former Barcelona teammates Luis Suarez and Sergio Busquets were substituted after 64 minutes, with Miami trailing 1-0. Messi had a few chances during the match, including a 30-yard volley that was saved by the Dallas goalkeeper. Dallas took the lead in the third minute through Jesus Ferreira. This defeat comes after a disappointing 0-0 draw against El Salvador on Friday. Miami will now embark on a hectic international tour, with matches scheduled in Saudi Arabia, Hong Kong, and Tokyo. Asian stocks rise with focus on China support, BOJ, markets wrap. Bloomberg. Asian shares have risen after U.S. stocks closed at record levels, with investors awaiting the reaction of Chinese markets to Beijing's latest pledge to halt a stock rout and the Bank of Japan's policy decision. Futures for Hong Kong shares indicated they could rise about 1% after Chinese Premier Li Qiang flagged more forceful measures to stabilize the country's slumping stock market. In Japan, the central bank is expected to keep its main monetary policy settings steady on Tuesday. The deepening pessimism about Chinese equities is in contrast to the U.S., where investors are weighing strong economic signals and the prospects for corporate earnings. How to replace China in your portfolio. Economist. China's foreign investors are becoming increasingly concerned about the country's souring relations with Western governments, the slump in its property market, and the overall decline in its stock market. As a result, investment firms are launching ex-China funds and exchange-traded funds, which are seeing increased interest from investors. Other emerging markets such as India, South Korea, and Taiwan are also benefiting from the shift in investment away from China. However, these alternatives have their own flaws, such as expensive valuations in India and a lack of size in other emerging markets. Chinese ship deals are either savvy or very risky. Bloomberg. Chinese automakers, including BYD and SAIC, are buying roll-on, roll-off car carriers to transport their electric vehicles, EVs, to international markets. BYD has commenced the maiden voyage of its BYD Explorer No. 1, while SAIC has ordered at least 12 new ships, including the world's largest dual-fuel carrier. The deals were made when EV sales were predicted to boom, and the automakers were confident in strong overseas sales growth. However, the financial viability of the boat purchases is questionable, given the small percentage of EVs currently being exported. It's 700 kilometers from Darwin, but this country has the fourth slowest internet in the world. ABC. Timor-Leste's slow internet speed is hampering its development and economic growth, according to locals. The country has the fourth slowest internet in the world, and downloading small files can be difficult. The government has promised to improve the situation with the construction of the Timor-Leste South submarine cable system, which will connect the country to the internet via Australia. However, locals have also called for better regulation of the industry and increased infrastructure support. No frills flying emerges as air travel's painful, greener future. Bloomberg. Low-cost carriers are leading the way in reducing emissions, according to data from carbon reduction advisory firm Invest Global. The 5 airlines with the lowest emissions per passenger are all low-cost carriers, with Wizz Air leading the way. This is largely due to their low-cost business model, which involves reducing weight, space, and extras such as food and drink. However, the industry is not on track to hit its net zero target, according to the International Energy Agency. Low-cost carriers were responsible for almost 90% of fuel use and emissions growth among U.S. airlines between 2005 and 2019. Commodity giant ADM must act fast to restore trust. Bloomberg. Archer Daniels Midland, ADM, one of the world's largest traders of agricultural commodities, saw its shares fall over 22% after putting its CFO on administrative leave pending an investigation into its accounts. Although ADM did not disclose any details of what is wrong with the accounts, the investigation appears to be centered around its nutrition unit. The company has so far provided limited information, but has trimmed its full-year adjusted earnings outlook only slightly, suggesting that any accounting problem is limited. ADM has a checkered history, having been at the center of a commodity price-fixing conspiracy in the 1990s. Gucci owner buys NYC building on Fifth Avenue for $963 million. Bloomberg. Fashion firm Kering, owner of Gucci and Balenciaga, has purchased a building on New York's Fifth Avenue for $963 million. Kering said in a statement that the purchase was part of its selective real estate strategy, aimed at securing key highly desirable locations for its houses. Kering follows Prada, which expanded its presence on the same street with an $835 million deal last month. That's all for today's news. We covered a range of topics, from UN experts urging Hong Kong to drop charges against Jimmy Lai, to China considering measures to stabilize its stock markets, to India overtaking Hong Kong as the world's 4th largest stock market. We also discussed China's attempt to curb short selling, the closure of Asia Genesis Asset Management, China facing scrutiny on its human rights record, Riot Games' plan to lay off employees, Lionel Messi's loss in a preseason friendly, and the rise of Asian stocks. Now, let's dive into some analysis. It's no surprise that UN experts are calling for charges against Jimmy Lai to be dropped, as his arrest and trial have drawn international attention due to concerns over freedom of expression and human rights in Hong Kong. The outcome of this trial could have wider implications for China's relations with the US and UK. Moving on to the stock market, China's economic challenges have led to a decline in its stock market, while India has been attracting investors with its strong corporate earnings and growing retail investor base. However, some strategists predict a turnaround for China's stock market in the future. In efforts to stabilize the market, China's largest stockbroker, CITIC Securities, has suspended short selling for some clients. However, history has shown that short-selling restrictions are not a long-term solution and may have negative effects on market liquidity. Unfortunately, not all investors have been successful in navigating these markets. Hedge fund Asia Genesis Asset Management is shutting down after suffering losses from China's stock market rout and Japan's rally. They made a big mistake in investment decisions, highlighting the challenges of investing in volatile markets. China is also facing scrutiny from Western countries during its Universal Periodic Review at the United Nations. This review provides an opportunity for Western countries to hold China accountable for its actions, including the crackdown on civil liberties and the situation in Xinjiang and Hong Kong. In the gaming industry, Riot Games, the maker of League of Legends, is laying off employees and restructuring its operations due to a lack of focus and too many ongoing projects. This follows similar job cuts at Unity Software and Twitch, reflecting the challenges faced by companies in the industry. Moving on to sports, Lionel Messi and his team suffered a loss in a preseason friendly. Despite having a few chances, they were unable to secure a win. Messi's move to Inter Miami has generated much attention, and fans are eager to see how he performs in the upcoming matches. In the financial markets, Asian shares have risen following U.S. stocks' record levels, with investors waiting to see the reaction of Chinese markets to Beijing's measures to stabilize the stock market. Additionally, the Bank of Japan's policy decision is being closely watched. Shifting gears, we discuss the shift in investment away from China and the launch of ex-China funds and exchange-traded funds. India, South Korea, and Taiwan are among the emerging markets benefiting from this shift. However, each alternative market has its own challenges, such as expensive valuations and lack of size. In the automotive industry, Chinese automakers are purchasing roll-on, roll-off car carriers to transport their electric vehicles to international markets. While this may have seemed like a savvy move at the time, it is now being questioned due to the small percentage of EVs currently being exported. Moving on to technology, Timor-Leste's slow internet speed is hindering its development and economic growth. The government plans to improve the situation with the construction of a submarine cable system, but locals are also calling for better regulation and infrastructure support. In the aviation industry, low-cost carriers are leading the way in reducing emissions, thanks to their low-cost business model that involves reducing weight and extras. However, the industry as a whole is not on track to meet its net zero target, highlighting the need for further action. Next, Archer Daniels Midland, ADM, one of the world's largest traders of agricultural commodities, is facing a decline in its shares after putting its CFO on leave pending an investigation into its accounts. While the extent of the accounting problem is unclear, ADM has provided limited information and trimmed its earnings outlook only slightly. Lastly, fashion firm Kering, owner of Gucci and Balenciaga, has purchased a building on New York's Fifth Avenue. This move aligns with their real estate strategy of securing key locations for their luxury brands. That's all for today's news analysis. Remember, these are just summaries and there's always more to the story. Now, it's your turn. What are your thoughts on these topics? Do you have any questions? Let's discuss. Thank you for tuning in. The content above showcases the latest briefing reports and analytical synopses, thoughtfully curated by the 6Do team. These insights stem from a wide array of reputable media outlets, think tanks, government sources, and specialized experts worldwide. We encourage you to explore these sources for a comprehensive perspective. Keep in mind that while the content may not always align with the official standpoint of 6Do Brief, it's not meant to be taken as absolute directives for decision-making. Comprising seasoned media professionals, learned scholars, and accomplished scientists, the 6Do team embodies a trailblazing, fully independent media entity. To customize 6Do Brief to meet your professional needs, you have the option to subscribe to a diverse array of briefings on our website, 6dobrief.com. Regardless of your location, you can conveniently receive 6Do Brief via email.